The gift for my 31st birthday from my mother-in-law was a set of divorce papers. "This is from all of us," she announced right there in the middle of the restaurant. My own husband, David, had his phone out, filming my reaction, no doubt for some private family laugh later on. I simply thanked her, signed the documents on the spot, and walked away from the table. She had absolutely no idea what I had already put in motion. 3 days before my birthday, I had walked into our kitchen to find Eleanor, my mother-in-law, at the table with a spread of legal documents laid out in front of her. The second she noticed me, she hastily snatched the papers and concealed them inside a fancy birthday envelope. "Just some family paperwork," she'd said, a strange, tight smile on her face. I assumed it was something mundane, like property documents or insurance forms David needed to sign. The ornate envelope was so festive, so innocent-looking. That morning, I had woken up early to get a pot of coffee brewing before leaving for my shift at Lombardi's Trattoria. The house was quiet, and I expected the kitchen to be empty. Instead, there was Eleanor, hunched over the official-looking documents, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she scrutinized every page. Her focus was so sharp it felt almost predatory as she made small, precise notes in the margins with a red pen. The creak of the floorboards under my feet made her head snap up. For a split second, her face wore an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't her usual look of mild disapproval or disappointment. It was something closer to pure, unadulterated satisfaction. She moved with a speed that was startling for a woman in her late 60s, gathering the documents into a neat stack and slipping them into what I now recognized as a birthday card envelope. "Good morning, darling," she said, her voice so unnaturally sweet it made my skin crawl. Eleanor had never, not once, called me darling. Most of the time, she avoided using my name at all, referring to me simply as David's wife or she when talking to others. The sudden term of endearment felt completely wrong, like she was testing out a word she knew she would soon discard forever. The envelope itself was beautiful, made of a thick, cream-colored cardstock with elegant gold foil lettering that spelled out "Happy Birthday" in a flowing script. Tiny, embossed flowers decorated the edges, and the entire thing screamed expensive and thoughtful. Eleanor held it delicately, tracing the border with a fingertip as if admiring her own cleverness. "I picked this one out especially for you," she said, her eyes locked on my face, trying to gauge my reaction. "Before we get any deeper into this wild story of betrayal turned into triumph, please hit that subscribe button if you believe honest work deserves respect, not ridicule. Your support helps us bring more stories of people who refuse to be kept down. Now, let's get back to how Eleanor's cruelty completely blew up in her face. I poured myself a cup of coffee and attempted to make small talk, asking if she needed any help with the paperwork she was sorting. Eleanor let out a light, airy laugh, a sound so foreign from her usual clipped, judgmental tone. "Oh, no. This is something special I've been putting together for a while now. David doesn't even know all the details yet." The secrecy was unusual. In my 3 years of marriage, Eleanor had never planned a surprise or shown any interest in giving gifts outside of obligatory holidays. She was a practical, no-nonsense woman, not the type for sentimental gestures. The fact that she was putting any effort at all into my birthday felt like it could be a major breakthrough in our strained relationship. "It's something that will change everything," she continued, placing the envelope carefully into her designer handbag. "I've been consulting with professionals to make sure every detail is handled correctly. You deserve something truly meaningful after all this time." Her words ignited an unexpected flicker of hope inside me. Maybe Eleanor was finally starting to see my efforts to be a good wife and a part of their family. Maybe she'd noticed how hard I was trying to find a more respectable job. Or maybe she'd finally accepted how much I loved David, despite their constant criticism. The thought that she might be planning something genuinely special for my 31st birthday made me feel lighter than I had in months. David came into the kitchen a few minutes later, already dressed for work in his tailored suit. He kissed my cheek and grabbed his usual coffee mug, but I saw him exchange a significant look with his mother. It was a silent, loaded conversation that I was deliberately excluded from. When I asked if everything was okay, David just smiled and said they were planning a little something for my birthday. For the rest of that week, Eleanor's behavior took a bizarrely pleasant turn. She called me twice to ask about my work schedule, ensuring I would be free for dinner on my birthday. She even suggested we celebrate at Lombardi's Trattoria, which absolutely stunned me. Eleanor had never shown the slightest interest in visiting my workplace, always finding an excuse whenever David suggested we eat there. "I think it would be meaningful to celebrate where you work," she explained over the phone. "It's important for us to acknowledge all the parts of your life." The words sounded considerate, but there was an undercurrent that made my skin crawl. Eleanor didn't do sentimental. Her sudden interest in acknowledging my life felt calculated, not genuine. Ashley, David's sister, started acting strangely as well. She'd give me these secretive smiles whenever Eleanor mentioned my birthday plans and volunteered to help with the arrangements without even being asked. Ashley usually dodged any family event that included me, citing work obligations or social plans. Her sudden enthusiasm felt suspicious, but I pushed my doubts aside, choosing to believe they were finally making an effort to accept me. David's excitement for the birthday dinner grew throughout the week. He was constantly on his phone, replying to texts with these self-satisfied smirks. Whenever I tried to get a peek at his screen, he'd playfully angle it away, telling me it was surprise business that I wasn't privy to. At the time, his secrecy felt loving, not sinister. The night before my birthday, Eleanor called to confirm the dinner plans one last time. "Wear something nice," she advised, "but not too formal. You'll want to be comfortable for what we have in mind." Her voice had an edge of anticipation that I mistook for excitement about finally celebrating me properly. I spent extra time picking out my outfit, finally settling on a navy blue dress that was professional, but not stuffy. My reflection in the mirror showed someone desperate to be worthy of their approval, smoothing out every imaginary wrinkle, checking every detail. I wanted to look perfect for what I was hoping would be a turning point for us as a family. That night, as I got ready for bed, David was unusually affectionate. He held me tight and told me how much he loved me, speaking with an intensity that felt almost like a farewell. "Tomorrow is a day you'll never forget," he whispered into my hair. I drifted off to sleep, feeling loved and hopeful, completely oblivious to the fact that his tenderness was just guilt over what was to come. The decorated envelope was sitting in Eleanor's purse, waiting to unleash its devastating contents. While I was dreaming of finally earning their respect, she was probably rehearsing her speech about family standards and difficult choices. The woman who had smiled so strangely while handling those legal documents was counting down the hours until she could tear my life apart. I woke up on my 31st birthday thinking it would be the day I was finally accepted into David's family. Instead, it would become the day Eleanor gave me the greatest gift of my life: freedom from their toxic judgment and the chance to find out who I could be without their limitations holding me back. The first family gathering after our honeymoon was David's cousin Matthew's graduation party. I spent 2 hours getting ready, choosing a conservative black dress and minimal jewelry, hoping to blend in quietly with the family. Eleanor greeted me at the door with air kisses that never touched my cheeks, then immediately steered me toward a group of relatives I'd never met. "This is David's wife," she announced to the circle of well-dressed women. "She works in the service industry." The pause before those words was deliberate, giving everyone time to process what that meant. Aunt Susan raised her eyebrows knowingly while Cousin Jessica made a sympathetic sound that felt more like pity than welcome. "How interesting," Jessica said, her smile tight and condescending. "What kind of service work do you do?" Eleanor jumped in before I could answer, explaining that I was still figuring out my career path while working temporarily in food service. She made it sound like I was lost and directionless rather than employed and hardworking. The conversation continued around me as if I wasn't there. They discussed Matthew's internship at a prestigious law firm, another cousin's promotion at a marketing company, and Ashley's recent engagement to a doctor. When someone asked about my background, Eleanor smoothly redirected the topic to David's accounting practice and how proud they were of his professional growth. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe away from their suffocating disapproval. In the hallway, I overheard Eleanor telling someone, "We're hoping she'll find something more suitable soon. David deserves a wife who can contribute to their social position properly." The words stung because they reduced my entire identity to my perceived failure to meet their standards. Thanksgiving dinner 3 months later followed the same pattern, but with increased intensity. Eleanor had invited extended family, including relatives I'd only met once at the wedding. As we went around the table sharing what we were thankful for, she made sure to highlight everyone's professional achievements while strategically skipping over me entirely. "I'm thankful for Ashley's engagement to Dr. Hayes," Eleanor said, beaming at her daughter, "and for David's growing client base at his accounting firm. It's wonderful to see young people establishing themselves professionally." When my turn came, I mentioned being grateful for family and good health, avoiding any reference to work that might trigger another lecture. Eleanor's sister Susan pulled me aside after dinner, ostensibly to help with dishes, but actually to deliver unsolicited advice. "You know, dear, Eleanor just wants what's best for David." "Have you considered going back to school? There are so many opportunities for women willing to improve themselves." Her words carried the weight of family consensus. They'd all discussed my inadequacies and agreed on solutions. The holidays became exercises in endurance rather than celebration. At Christmas, Eleanor gave Ashley a beautiful silk scarf and presented me with a book titled Professional Success for Women, wrapped in newspaper instead of proper gift paper. The message was clear. Everyone else received gifts while I received homework assignments for becoming acceptable. David's birthday party in February revealed how deeply the family dynamics had shifted. Eleanor planned an elaborate celebration at an upscale restaurant, inviting his professional colleagues and successful friends. I wore my best dress and tried to participate in conversations about business trends and investment strategies, but my contributions were met with polite smiles that quickly faded. When someone asked about my work, David actually stepped in before I could answer. "She's exploring different opportunities right now," he said, avoiding eye contact with me. His shame about my job had grown so obvious that he couldn't even let me speak for myself anymore. The man who once bragged about my work ethic to his friends now treated my employment like a family secret. Ashley's engagement party in March brought new levels of social torture. She'd invited her college sorority sisters, all successful professional women who asked polite questions about my career. Eleanor hovered nearby during these conversations, ready to redirect attention. Whenever I mentioned Lombardi's Trattoria, she'd interrupt with comments about the wedding planning or ask someone else about their job, making my occupation invisible in social settings. The worst incident happened during Easter dinner when Eleanor's friend Carol joined us. Carol was a retired executive who spent the meal discussing her daughter's law career and her son's medical practice. When she asked about my background, Eleanor actually interrupted my response to explain that I was between opportunities and considering various options for professional growth. I excused myself to the powder room and cried quietly into tissues, feeling completely erased from my own life story. Eleanor was rewriting my identity to fit her narrative, turning steady employment into temporary confusion and honest work into something shameful that needed explanation or apology. The pattern of family gatherings became predictable and painful. Eleanor would position me near people who would naturally ask about my work, then swoop in to manage the conversation when my answers weren't up to her standards. She'd suggest I was actively job hunting or pursuing education, creating fictional versions of my life that sounded more acceptable to their social circle. David's transformation during these events was the most heartbreaking aspect of our deteriorating situation. The man who'd fallen in love with my independence and strong work ethic now looked embarrassed when I mentioned my job. He'd change the subject quickly or make jokes about upgrading my career, as if my current employment was a temporary embarrassment rather than legitimate work. The family group chat became another source of daily humiliation. Ashley would share articles about successful women, always accompanied by comments about inspiration and goals. When I'd respond positively, she'd follow up with questions about my own professional development that felt more like interrogation than conversation. Eleanor's friends at the country club provided another avenue for public embarrassment. She'd mention my employment status to them with theatrical sighs, describing my job as David's burden that the family was helping him handle. When these women encountered me at social events, their pitying expressions and overly encouraging comments about finding my path made it clear that Eleanor had portrayed me as a project rather than a person. The constant criticism began affecting how I saw myself. Eleanor's comments about my appearance made me second-guess every outfit choice and makeup decision. I started shopping for clothes I couldn't afford, trying to look like the professional women she obviously preferred. My credit card balance grew while my self-confidence shrank. By the spring of our second year of marriage, I'd become a completely different person than the confident woman David had married. Eleanor's systematic campaign of disapproval had succeeded in making me question my worth, my choices, and my place in David's life. Every family interaction reinforced their message that I was a temporary embarrassment rather than a permanent family member. The breaking point arrived during a phone conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Eleanor was talking to her friend Helen about David's marriage, and her words cut through me with surgical precision. I keep praying he'll come to his senses before it's too late. He's such a good boy, and he deserves someone who can enhance his life rather than hold him back. Standing in my own hallway, listening to my mother-in-law pray for the destruction of my marriage, I finally understood that acceptance was never going to be possible. Eleanor didn't just disapprove of my job, she disapproved of my very existence in David's life. The battle I'd been fighting was rigged from the start, designed to wear me down until I either transformed completely or disappeared entirely. The morning after hearing Eleanor's devastating phone call, I sat at my laptop with a new kind of resolve. If she was praying for David to leave me, I would become the professional woman she claimed he deserved. The job search sites glowed on my screen as I built profiles on every platform I could find: LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster, and a handful of local employment sites. My resume looked pathetic, spread across a single page. 3 years at Lombardi's Trattoria, a high school diploma, and some scattered customer service experience from part-time jobs in school. I stared at the empty spaces where college degrees and professional accomplishments were supposed to be, hearing Eleanor's voice in my head about real qualifications and proper preparation. I rewrote my job descriptions 5 times, trying to make waiting tables sound like executive experience. Managed multiple client relationships simultaneously while maintaining high satisfaction ratings. Working coordinated complex service delivery under time-sensitive conditions. The words felt hollow and inflated, but online articles insisted that strategic phrasing could bridge experience gaps. Cover letters became my new obsession. I'd get up early to write personalized messages for administrative assistant roles, customer service positions, and entry-level office jobs across 3 counties. Each letter took an hour to craft, meticulously explaining how my restaurant background had prepared me for professional challenges. I highlighted my reliability, communication skills, and ability to perform under pressure. The first rejection email arrived within hours of applying for a dental office receptionist position. Thank you for your interest, but we are seeking candidates with relevant clinical office experience. The second rejection came from an insurance agency. We require applicants with a college-level education for this role. By the end of the first week, my inbox was overflowing with polite dismissals that all said the same thing. I wasn't qualified for anything beyond what I was already doing. David found me crying over my laptop one evening after a particularly brutal string of rejections. Maybe you're aiming too high, too fast, he suggested, rubbing my shoulders. There's no shame in starting smaller and working your way up. His words were meant to be comforting, but they just echoed his mother's constant message that I should lower my expectations instead of raising my qualifications. The interview at Patriot Insurance Company was my first real-world lesson in professional humiliation. The office building itself was intimidating from the moment I walked through the revolving glass doors. Women in sharp suits clicked across marble floors in expensive shoes, carrying leather briefcases and speaking confidently into wireless headsets. I felt completely out of place, even though I was wearing my best outfit. Mrs. Henderson, the hiring manager, glanced at my resume for maybe 30 seconds before setting it aside. "Your background is quite limited for this position," she said, not bothering to hide her disappointment. "We typically hire candidates with insurance experience or business degrees. What made you think you'd be a good fit for account management?" My carefully rehearsed answers about transferable skills and my eagerness to learn just fell flat in that sterile room. Mrs. Henderson actually checked her watch while I was talking, making it painfully clear that my time was being wasted along with hers. "Perhaps you should consider positions more aligned with your current skill set," she suggested, ending the interview 15 minutes early. The drive home from that disaster was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I sat in the parking lot for a while, replaying every awkward moment and cringing at my own naive optimism. Eleanor's voice was like a broken record in my head. Some people just aren't meant for professional environments. Enrolling in community college was my next desperate move. The evening business program promised to give me the credentials Eleanor claimed I was missing. I signed up for Introduction to Business, Basic Accounting, and Professional Communication, paying the fees with money I had been saving for a new couch. My first night of class showed me just how unprepared I was for the academic world. The other students were mostly working professionals looking for advancement or a career change. They talked confidently about their corporate experiences while I sat in the back, taking notes and praying no one would ask about my background. Professor Martinez assigned a project on professional networking that required interviewing someone in our desired field. I had no business connections, no professional contacts, and no clue how to approach a stranger for an informational interview. As my classmates discussed their mentors and industry contacts, I realized just how isolated I was from the professional world. David's reaction to my college enrollment was lukewarm at best. "Are you sure this is worth the time and money?" he asked, looking over my class schedule. "Maybe you should just focus on finding a job first and worry about school later." His practical concerns made sense financially, but his lack of enthusiasm felt like another vote of no confidence. My performance at Lombardi's started to suffer as the stress and exhaustion mounted. Late-night studying left me tired during busy shifts, and the constant rejection from job applications drained the cheerful energy that customers had come to appreciate. I'd catch myself spacing out while taking orders, my mind consumed with interview prep or homework. Mr. Lombardi noticed the change right away. "You seem troubled lately, Jennifer," he said during a quiet afternoon. "Is everything all right at home?" His genuine concern made me want to tell him everything, but how could I explain that my husband's family was systematically destroying my confidence? I just blamed general stress and promised to do better. Sophia, the head cook, became my unofficial therapist during work breaks. She'd noticed my red eyes after a rough evening of job hunting and would wordlessly hand me an extra strong coffee or a plate of food I hadn't ordered. "Education is good," she told me one day, "but don't ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of honest work." The financial strain of my self-improvement campaign created new tensions at home. Interview clothes, gas for driving to different cities, textbooks, and tuition fees were draining our budget. David started questioning every purchase, asking if new blazers were really necessary when I wasn't even getting hired. "Maybe we should take a break from all this," he suggested, after looking at our credit card bill. "You're spending more money trying to get jobs than you'd make in the first few months." His practical observation felt like abandonment at a time when I desperately needed his support. The community college library became my refuge. I'd sit in a quiet corner, surrounded by business textbooks and career guides, trying to absorb the knowledge that might make me worthy of professional consideration. Other students formed study groups, but I stayed on my own, too embarrassed about my background to seek out academic partnerships. My grades were excellent, proving I had the intelligence Eleanor claimed I lacked. Professor Martinez praised my written work and even asked me to share my customer service insights with the class. For 3 hours a week, I felt capable and valued. But that feeling would evaporate the moment I walked back through my own front door. The spring semester brought an advanced business communication class and my first presentation. Standing in front of the class, explaining customer relationship management principles I'd learned from working at the restaurant, I felt confident and knowledgeable. My classmates asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in my practical experience. That confidence lasted until I told David about my academic success over dinner. "That's great," he said absently, scrolling through his phone. "Maybe Eleanor will be impressed when you finish the program." His response reduced my personal achievement to just another piece of ammunition in the ongoing war for his mother's approval. The semester ended with strong grades and a renewed sense of hope, but the job applications continued to bring the same rejections. Insufficient experience. Seeking candidates with a completed degree. Position requires a corporate background. Each email reinforced the message that education alone wasn't enough to bridge the gap between my current reality and their expectations. Eleanor's reaction to my academic progress was predictably dismissive. "Community college is a good start," she said when David mentioned my grades, though real career advancement usually requires a proper university education. Even my success was just more evidence of my continued inadequacy in her relentless campaign to prove I wasn't good enough for her son. Summer arrived, my determination still intact despite Eleanor's dismissive remarks about community college. I started using spreadsheets to track my job applications, color-coding them by status: green for submitted, yellow for pending, red for rejected. Within 3 weeks, my screen was a sea of red, each cell a tiny symbol of another door slammed shut. The rejection from Apex Marketing was particularly painful. I'd driven 45 minutes for the interview, wearing a new blazer I'd bought just for the occasion. The HR director glanced at my resume, asked 2 perfunctory questions about my restaurant experience, and then spent the rest of the time explaining why they needed someone with a traditional business background. "Your customer service skills are admirable," she said with a practiced, polite smile, "but this role requires strategic thinking and analytical capabilities that come from a corporate environment." She might as well have just told me that waitresses couldn't think. I thanked her for her time and walked back to my car feeling even smaller than when I'd arrived. The folder of rejection letters was getting thick enough to need a rubber band. Each form response was slightly different, but the core message was always the same: insufficient qualifications, lack of relevant experience, not the right fit for our organization. I started to recognize the phrases that meant no before I even finished reading the email. "While your background is interesting," meant rejection. "We've decided to pursue other candidates," meant failure. Some companies never replied at all, leaving me to obsessively check my email for weeks before finally accepting the silence as its own answer. Those non-responses were almost worse than the direct rejections, suggesting my application wasn't even worth acknowledging. I would refresh my inbox dozens of times a day, desperate for any sign that anyone, valued my effort. Eleanor's weekly phone calls became sessions of thinly veiled gloating. "How's the job search going, darling?" She'd ask with that false sweetness. When I admitted to another week with no good news, she'd make these sympathetic sounds that felt more like a celebration. "Well, these things take patience," she'd say. "Not everyone is cut out for certain types of work." The interview at Westfield Insurance was the most humiliating experience of the entire search. The receptionist made me wait in the lobby for 2 hours, claiming the hiring manager was running behind. Other candidates came and went while I sat there, trying to look professional despite my growing anxiety. When Mr. Westfield finally called me into his office, he seemed surprised to even see me. "Oh, right, the restaurant girl," he said, shuffling through papers on his desk. "Let's see what we have here." He had me complete a computer skills test that involved spreadsheet functions I'd never even seen before. My confusion was obvious, and his impatience grew with every question I couldn't answer. "This position requires a high degree of technical competency," he explained, not unkindly but firmly. "Perhaps you should consider roles that better match your current skill level." The suggestion that I should stay in my lane felt like Eleanor herself was speaking through a stranger's mouth. David started noticing my defeated returns from interviews. "How did it go today?" he'd ask when I walked in with slumped shoulders and tired eyes. I started editing my stories, leaving out the most humiliating details to preserve what little was left of his respect for me. When the hiring manager at Thompson Real Estate literally laughed at my salary expectations, I just told David the interview went pretty well. The community college campus became my sanctuary. Professor Martinez treated me with a respect that employers denied, praising my written work and encouraging my participation. My classmates, mostly working adults, didn't judge my restaurant background the way professional interviewers did. Business communication class taught me to analyze my failures objectively. My presentations earned high marks, and Professor Martinez often used my customer service examples to illustrate theoretical concepts. "Your practical experience provides a valuable perspective," she told the class, making me feel knowledgeable instead of inadequate for the first time in months. But academic success didn't translate to job offers. The rejection from Coastal Bank arrived the same week I got an A on my midterm. "While your educational efforts are commendable, we require candidates with prior banking experience for this entry-level position." The irony was crushing. Even entry-level jobs demanded experience I couldn't get without first being hired. Lombardi's, the place I was so desperate to leave, became the only source of stability in my increasingly chaotic world. Mr. Lombardi noticed my distraction and pulled me aside. "You've been different lately," he observed, genuine concern in his weathered face. "Is everything okay?" I couldn't tell him my husband's family was systematically destroying my self-worth. I just blamed stress and promised I was fine. He wasn't convinced, but he gave me easier sections and extra breaks when I looked particularly exhausted. Sophia, our head cook, became my unexpected rock. She'd worked at Lombardi's for 15 years, raising 3 kids as a single mom, and she knew a struggle when she saw one. "They try to make you think you're not good enough," she said one night as we cleaned up. "But look at you. You handle 6 tables during a rush, remember every order, and keep customers happy even when they're being difficult. That takes a kind of intelligence they don't teach in those fancy schools." Leo, the youngest server, offered his own brand of encouragement. "You're the smartest person here," he'd tell me when I looked defeated. "Those companies have no idea what they're missing." His unwavering faith felt precious because it came without any conditions. The financial strain was affecting every part of our marriage. Interview outfits, gas, parking fees, and tuition were eating through our savings. David watched our balance shrink with growing concern. "Maybe you should take a break from applying," he suggested after seeing our monthly expenses. "Focus on school for now. Worry about a career change after you graduate." His suggestion was practical, but it felt like surrendering to Eleanor's timeline instead of proving her wrong. Sleep became a luxury. I'd lie awake, replaying interview mistakes, wondering what I could have said differently, imagining how other candidates had impressed the employers who found me so lacking. The darkness amplified every insecurity Eleanor had ever planted in my mind. My appetite vanished along with my confidence. I lost weight without trying. Eleanor noticed during our monthly family dinner, commenting that I looked drawn and tired lately, with a false concern that felt more like satisfaction. My physical appearance had become just more evidence of my failure. By autumn, I'd applied to over 47 different positions. The rejections were routine, but they still stung. Eleanor's predictions about my limitations were proving true, and David's growing impatience left me questioning everything I was fighting for. The laundry basket sat next to me, filled with clothes that represented my shrinking world: work uniforms, interview outfits that had failed me, and casual clothes for staying home between disappointments. My phone buzzed with an unknown number while I was folding David's work shirts. I usually ignored unfamiliar numbers, assuming they were telemarketers, but for some reason, I swiped to answer. Maybe I was hoping for a miracle, or maybe I was just tired of feeling so disconnected. "Hello, may I speak with Jennifer?" The woman's voice was professional, but warm, without the hurried tone I'd come to expect from business calls. She said my name like it mattered, with careful pronunciation. "This is Sarah Evans from the Majestic Crest Hotel's Human Resources Department. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." My heart stopped. The Majestic Crest Hotel. I vaguely remembered sending an application there on a desperate night in February, 6 months ago, when the winter rejection letters were piling up like snow. It was one of dozens I'd sent out that week, a shot in the dark on an online job board. "We received your application for our guest services coordinator position," Sarah continued, "and I was wondering if you were still interested in discussing opportunities with our team." Her words felt impossible. After months of deafening silence, someone was actually calling me about a job, treating my application like it had value. I set down the shirt I was folding, my hands trembling as I reached for a pen. "Yes, absolutely," I managed, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "I'm very interested in learning more." Sarah's laugh was genuine and encouraging. "Wonderful. I have to tell you, your restaurant experience is what really caught our eye. We found that candidates with your background often excel in hospitality because you understand customer service from the ground up." Her words were revolutionary. Someone was praising my waitressing experience instead of treating it like a liability. Sarah explained that the Majestic Crest specialized in creating exceptional guest experiences and that they valued employees who understood service through practical application, not just theory. My years at Lombardi's weren't something to overcome. They were credentials that qualified me for something better. "We offer comprehensive training programs for career development," she went on, "including management track opportunities for employees who demonstrate leadership potential. Our benefits package includes full health and dental, a retirement plan, and educational assistance for professional development courses." The benefits she listed were beyond anything I had imagined. At Lombardi's, health insurance was a luxury we couldn't afford. The idea of an employer investing in my education instead of questioning it felt foreign and wonderful. "There's one more aspect of this position that might interest you," Sarah said, her voice taking on an excited tone. "The role includes housing in our employee residential building. It's a fully furnished apartment with utilities included, just a 5-minute walk from the hotel." I had to sit down. Free housing meant independence. It meant freedom from David's family, from Eleanor's constant criticism and financial pressure. A new life, 3 hours away from her disapproving presence, was an impossible dream being offered as a reality. "The salary range is $42,000 to $48,000 annually, depending on experience," Sarah added. "My current income at Lombardi's barely cleared $30,000, and that was with good tips and extra shifts. The financial independence this job offered would change my entire life." "I realize this is a big decision since you'd be relocating," Sarah said, "but we're very impressed with your background and think you'd be an excellent fit for our team. Would you be interested in scheduling a phone interview later this week?" My mind was racing. Professional respect, financial security, physical distance from Eleanor's toxicity, and a chance to prove my worth in an environment that valued my skills. Everything I had been fighting for was being offered by someone who saw potential, not limitations. I would love to schedule an interview, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. This opportunity sounds incredible. We scheduled the interview for Thursday. After hanging up, I just sat there, feeling an emotion I'd almost forgotten: hope. It bubbled up from deep inside, replacing the constant gnawing anxiety that had become my new normal. The irony wasn't lost on me. Eleanor's birthday envelope sat somewhere in this house, filled with legal documents meant to destroy my place in this family. Meanwhile, I now had information that would prove every single negative thing she had ever said about me was completely wrong. The timing was like a gift from the universe. I wanted to call David immediately and share the news, but something held me back. This opportunity was mine, and mine alone, earned through my own efforts despite his family's constant discouragement. For the first time in our marriage, I had something valuable that didn't need their approval. The job offer was more than just employment. It was vindication. Sarah Evans had seen the qualities in my application that dozens of other employers had dismissed. I decided to keep the news a secret until my birthday celebration. Eleanor had spent 3 years trying to prove I wasn't good enough. Now I could reveal that not only was I good enough, but I was moving far beyond her limited vision of my potential. The decorated envelope she had prepared would be nothing compared to the real gift I'd be sharing, proof that her judgment had been wrong all along. That evening, I moved through my routine at Lombardi's with a renewed energy. My regulars noticed the change immediately. Mrs. Patterson, who came in every Monday, said, I looked happier than she'd seen me in months. The secret knowledge of my new future felt powerful and precious. While Eleanor was preparing to devastate me, I was holding the key that would transform our entire dynamic. For once, I would be the one with the shocking news to share. Tuesday morning brought the phone interview with Sarah Evans. I locked myself in our bedroom while David was at work. The conversation was better than I could have ever hoped. Her questions were about scenarios I could answer with confidence: handling difficult customers, managing multiple priorities, maintaining excellence under pressure. Your references from Lombardi's are glowing, she said. Mr. Lombardi spoke very highly of your reliability and customer relationship skills. That's exactly the foundation we build on here. Hearing that my boss had praised me to a potential new one felt like a balm on the wounds of 100 rejections. The formal job offer arrived by email that afternoon. The PDF was official and beautiful, with the hotel's elegant letterhead and detailed terms that made it all feel real. Guest Services Coordinator, starting salary $45,000 annually, full benefits, and employee housing included. I printed 3 copies, folding one carefully to carry in my purse like a secret weapon. That evening at Lombardi's, I worked with an energy I hadn't felt in months. Every customer interaction was a reminder that I was good at this, that my skills had value. You seem different tonight, Sophia observed during our break, more like yourself again. She was right. The weight of inadequacy had lifted. For the first time since Eleanor's campaign against me had begun, I felt worthy of the space I occupied. David's call on Wednesday morning changed everything. Mom wants to take you out for your birthday tomorrow, he said, excitement in his voice. She suggested Lombardi's, since you're always talking about how much you love it there. His version of Eleanor's reasoning made perfect sense to my hopeful heart. Finally, she was acknowledging my world. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely touched. Does this mean she's finally accepting my job? David's pause was just long enough to plant a seed of hope. I think she's starting to understand what makes you happy, he said carefully. She wants this birthday to be special. His words, combined with my secret job offer, felt like the universe was aligning for a perfect new beginning. Ashley's text that afternoon added to my excitement. Can't wait for tomorrow. This birthday will definitely be one for the books. Her enthusiasm felt genuine for the first time. I spent Wednesday evening planning my big reveal. The job offer letter sat in my jewelry box, waiting for the perfect moment. I practiced in the mirror, trying to find the right balance of humility and pride. "I have some exciting news to share," I rehearsed. "I received a job offer from the Majestic Crest Hotel." The words felt powerful, transformative. I imagined Eleanor's shocked face, David's proud smile, Ashley's grudging respect. Thursday morning, I went shopping. I chose a navy dress with a subtle elegance, something that would look good in a photo if David decided to capture the moment. The fabric felt expensive, the cut flattering. I wanted to look like the professional woman I was about to become. My hair appointment was a luxury I justified as an investment in my future self. "You're glowing today," Sandra, my stylist, said. "Something wonderful," I confirmed. "Tonight is going to change everything." My anticipation grew as I parked outside the restaurant where I'd spent 3 years building skills someone finally valued. Mr. Lombardi waved from behind the counter, probably wondering why I was arriving as a customer. Tonight, I would be able to thank him for helping me build the foundation for my new career. The secret job offer was like armor. When Eleanor had made a comment on Tuesday about my dead-end situation, I just smiled and said things were looking up. When she'd mentioned on Wednesday that David needed a wife who could contribute meaningfully, I'd agreed completely, knowing I was about to exceed her wildest dreams. David's excitement had become more and more obvious. He was constantly checking his phone, grinning at texts from the family group chat. He'd just smile mysteriously and say, "I'd love what they had planned." It all felt so loving, so conspiratorial. The job offer letter was in my jewelry box like a secret weapon. Tonight, that piece of paper would transform me from Eleanor's disappointing daughter-in-law into a success story. The woman who had spent years praying for my failure was about to witness my greatest triumph. Walking toward Lombardi's for my birthday dinner, I felt lighter than I had since my wedding day. My secret future gave me the confidence to face whatever awaited me inside. Eleanor's decorated envelope might contain some family paperwork, but my purse held the key to my freedom, my respect, and my vindication. The bell above the door chimed as I walked into the warm, familiar atmosphere I'd called my second home for 3 years. The evening light filtered through the checkered curtains, casting a golden glow on the tables where I'd served countless meals. "Jennifer," Mr. Lombardi's voice boomed across the dining room. He hurried over, his weathered face breaking into a genuine smile, pleased to see me as a guest. "This must be the birthday celebration." "Mr. Lombardi, I'd like you to meet my family," I said, with a pride that surprised even me. "This is my husband, David, his mother, Eleanor, and his sister, Ashley." He shook their hands warmly, his enthusiasm infectious. I felt a surge of gratitude that Eleanor would finally see the respect I'd earned here. Her smile was polite but strained as she scanned the modest dining room with a critical eye. The red vinyl booths and handwritten specials board clearly didn't meet her standards, but she was here, and that felt like progress. "We'll take good care of you tonight," Mr. Lombardi promised, leading us to the corner booth I'd requested. It offered privacy, but also gave me a clear view of the kitchen, where Sophia worked her magic. Sophia caught my eye from the service window and gave me a conspiratorial wink. Leo, busy setting tables, gave me a thumbs up and mouthed, "Happy birthday." It felt surreal, sitting in a booth where I'd served so many meals. Eleanor examined the laminated menu with visible skepticism, holding it as if it might contaminate her. Ashley was scrolling through her phone, occasionally looking up to exchange a loaded glance with David. "The chicken parmesan is excellent here," I suggested, trying to bridge the gap between my two worlds. "Mr. Lombardi's wife makes the sauce from her grandmother's recipe." Eleanor nodded politely but ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, a lobster ravioli that wasn't even a house specialty. David seemed a mix of nervous and excited all through dinner. He kept checking his phone under the table, firing off quick texts. "Are you expecting an important call?" I asked when his phone buzzed for the 4th time. He glanced at Eleanor before answering. "Just coordinating some surprise elements for tonight," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Eleanor's conversation was artificial, rehearsed. She asked about my college classes with false interest, her usual criticism conspicuously absent. Ashley just snorted quietly at one of her mother's comments, covering it with a cough. As we finished dinner, a cake appeared, carried by one of the newer servers. The entire restaurant began to sing, "Happy Birthday." Regulars joined in, and my heart swelled with a sense of belonging. "Make a wish," David said, positioning his phone to record the moment. I closed my eyes and wished for the courage to share my news gracefully, hoping it would finally bridge the gap between their expectations and my reality. I blew out the candles. Eleanor's applause was sharp and hollow. She reached into her designer purse with a theatrical flourish, withdrawing the decorated envelope I'd seen her with days ago. "We have a special gift for you," she announced, her voice carrying across the nearby tables. "From all of us." The cream and gold envelope looked so festive. Other customers turned to watch, probably thinking how lucky I was. Ashley's phone appeared in her hands, also aimed to record. David adjusted his angle to get a clear shot of my face, his excitement palpable. Their coordination was perfect. "Open it," Eleanor urged, her eyes bright with an anticipation I mistook for joy. The envelope felt heavy. The paper tore easily, revealing official documents. Legal letterhead caught my eye, followed by formal language that took a moment to process. "Petition for dissolution of marriage" sat at the top of the page, in bold, imposing letters. My breath caught in my throat. Divorce papers. On my birthday, in front of my coworkers and customers. The beautiful envelope was a weapon, designed for maximum public humiliation. The restaurant buzzed around us, but our booth was in a bubble of tension, so thick I could barely breathe. Eleanor's satisfied smile confirmed this was no mistake. David's phone remained steady, still recording. They wanted to capture my devastation, probably to watch it again later, to share it. My humiliation was their entertainment. The papers felt heavy in my trembling hands. I looked up at the three of them, watching me with hungry anticipation. Eleanor's smile was triumphant, Ashley's was gleeful, and David looked nervous but excited. They had turned my birthday into their victory lap, using my own workplace as the stage. Time seemed to slow. But instead of the devastation they expected, I felt something else entirely wash over me. Clarity. Pure, crystalline clarity about who these people were. Eleanor's smile was radiant. Ashley leaned forward, hungry for the breakdown. David's camera stayed focused, waiting for tears that would never come. The restaurant's ambient noise faded as diners sensed the drama. Mrs. Patterson, my regular, turned in her chair to get a better view. I looked down at the documents again. They'd even brought a pen. "Well?" Eleanor prompted when my silence stretched on. "Aren't you going to say something?" Her voice carried, inviting everyone to witness my reaction. She wanted me to beg, to cry, to make a scene. Instead, I reached for the pen they'd brought and signed my name, my handwriting steadier than it had been in months. The ink flowed smoothly across the signature line, marking the end of a marriage and the beginning of something they couldn't possibly imagine. Eleanor's triumphant expression faltered. David's phone wavered. "That's it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You're not going to fight this?" His disappointment was palpable. My calm acceptance was ruining their show. "Thank you," I said, standing up from the booth. "This is actually the most generous gift you could have given me." Eleanor's face shifted from satisfaction to bewilderment as I reached into my purse and pulled out my own envelope. The official job offer letter from the Majestic Crest Hotel. "I have some news to share as well," I announced, my voice carrying clearly through the now hushed restaurant. 3 days ago, I was offered a position as a guest services coordinator at the Majestic Crest Hotel. The salary is $45,000 a year, with full benefits and housing included. The words felt powerful, each one a precise strike into the silence. Eleanor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Ashley's phone slipped in her grasp before she recovered. Her expression shifted from glee to stunned disbelief. David's camera was now just capturing his own shocked face on the dark screen. "The position starts in 2 weeks," I continued, enjoying their rapt attention for a reason they had never planned. "It's in another city, about 3 hours from here." A fresh start with people who value restaurant experience and customer service skills. The restaurant erupted. "Jennifer, that's wonderful news," Mr. Lombardi's voice boomed. Sophia's face appeared in the kitchen window, her smile broad and proud. "You deserve this," she called out. Leo dropped his cleaning rag and started clapping, his enthusiasm infectious as other staff joined in. The sound of applause filled the room as my work family celebrated a triumph they knew I'd earned. Regular customers stood up from their tables, adding their voices to the celebration. Mrs. Patterson raised her water glass in a toast. "To Jennifer and her bright future." The restaurant became a community rallying around me, their genuine joy drowning out the family who had tried to destroy me. Eleanor's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something that looked a lot like fear. She'd expected to crush a vulnerable woman, not hand freedom to someone who had already secured her own independence. Her grand moment was collapsing into a public relations disaster. "You knew about this job when you signed those papers?" David asked. His voice strained. He was processing the fact that his wife had just accepted a divorce while holding a career opportunity that invalidated every criticism his family had ever made. "I received the offer 3 days ago," I confirmed, watching his face pale as the timeline clicked into place. The same day they had all started acting so strangely excited about my birthday. The irony was perfect. Eleanor had handed me divorce papers to break me, but she had actually just freed me to pursue a future she'd always claimed I could never achieve. "The training program includes management development," I added, pulling the official letterhead from my purse to show them. "They specifically recruited me because of my restaurant background. Apparently, my experience here demonstrates exactly the skills they value." "Management," Mr. Lombardi said, appearing at our table, his face glowing with pride. "Jennifer is one of our finest employees," he told Eleanor directly. "Smart, dedicated, and respected by everyone. That hotel is lucky to have her." His words carried the weight of 3 years of watching me work with integrity. Eleanor's silence was deafening. The woman who had spent years lecturing me about professional inadequacy now sat speechless as my coworkers celebrated an achievement that invalidated her entire narrative. Ashley lowered her phone, finally understanding their ambush had become my vindication. The video they had intended to share for a laugh would now be a permanent record of their own failure. David stared at the job offer letter as if it were written in a foreign language. 2 years of siding with his mother had just cost him a wife who was walking away with success, independence, and the moral high ground he had helped them try to steal. The silence that followed my announcement stretched across the dining room. I stood there, divorce papers in one hand, my future in the other, watching Eleanor's face twist. The woman who'd orchestrated this public execution was speechless, her smug smile frozen into a mask of panic. David's phone was still in his hands, its black screen reflecting his stunned face. "You planned this," Eleanor finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "You knew about the divorce papers." Her accusation had no conviction. She was starting to realize my calm wasn't planned. It was genuine relief. "I planned nothing," I replied, my voice steady and clear for the nearby tables to hear. "You handed me the freedom I didn't even know I wanted. 3 days ago, while you were preparing those papers, I received validation that everything you've said about my limitations was wrong. The timing was almost supernatural. $45,000, I repeated, letting the number sink in, plus benefits, housing, and a path to management. Each detail was a small explosion in their story about my inadequacy. Mr. Lombardi clasped my hands with fatherly pride. "Jennifer, this is incredible news," he said loudly. "The majestic crest is getting someone special." We'll miss you, but this is exactly what you deserve. His public endorsement validated my character in front of everyone who had just witnessed Eleanor's cruelty. Sophia came out from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron. "You're going to be amazing," she called out, her accent thick with emotion. "Show them what a girl from Lombardi's can do." Leo appeared beside her, his young face beaming. "This is the best birthday surprise ever," he declared. Regular customers started approaching our table. Mrs. Chin, who always requested my section on Fridays, squeezed my shoulder. "Good for you, honey. You always seemed too smart for—" She glanced at Eleanor, "staying in one place forever." The contrast was stark. My work family surrounded me with genuine affection. Meanwhile, Eleanor, David, and Ashley were frozen at their table, processing how their triumph had become a public spectacle of their own making. "When do you start?" Mr. Lombardi asked, drawing more staff into our circle. 2 weeks, I answered, watching Eleanor's face pale even more. She was finally understanding that I had been planning my escape while she was plotting my destruction. Her divorce papers weren't an ending. They were clearing the path for my new beginning. David finally found his voice. "You're really leaving? Just like that?" His question showed how little he understood about the damage his family had done. "I'm really free," I corrected him. "Free to work where I'm valued, live where I'm respected, and be with people who celebrate my success instead of planning my failure." My words were calm, but they cut through the noise. Eleanor tried to regain control. "This is all very sudden, darling. Perhaps you should think carefully before making such a drastic decision." The endearment was hollow and desperate. "I've been thinking for 3 years," I replied, meeting her gaze. "Every criticism, every comparison, every suggestion that I wasn't good enough. You were right about one thing, Eleanor. I do deserve better." The restaurant's applause grew louder. Other diners had pieced enough together to know they were witnessing someone's liberation. "The beautiful thing about timing," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "is that your gift arrived exactly when I was ready to accept it. I don't have to choose between my marriage and my self-respect anymore. You've made that decision beautifully simple." Ashley's recording now captured her own family's discomfort. They came as executioners, but were now defendants in the court of public opinion. I walked out of Lombardi's that night with just my purse and my dignity, leaving behind a family exposed. The cool evening air felt cleaner than it had in months. 2 weeks later, I stood in the marble lobby of the Majestic Crest Hotel, wearing a professional uniform that felt like armor. The nameplate on my chest read, "Jennifer Walsh, Guest Services Coordinator." My maiden name had returned along with my self-respect. The employee apartment became my sanctuary. No one criticized me or made me feel like an unwelcome guest in my own home. Sarah Martinez became my mentor, seeing a leadership potential in me that Eleanor had spent years trying to extinguish. She trusted me with VIP guests, telling me, "Your restaurant background gives you instincts others have to learn. You anticipate needs naturally." Word of my success filtered back in ways that felt like cosmic justice. Linda, one of Eleanor's country club friends, stayed at the hotel on a business trip. She recognized my name and requested my help. "You're David's ex-wife, aren't you?" she asked. "Eleanor mentioned you worked in hospitality, but she never said you were management at a place like this." Her surprise was telling. Eleanor had obviously been downplaying my achievements. Linda's glowing review of my service got back to Eleanor within days. David's attempts to reconnect started arriving on social media. His messages grew more desperate as he realized what he'd lost. His regret felt hollow compared to the genuine respect I now had. The divorce settlement was entirely in my favor, thanks to their own evidence. The video of the birthday ambush proved planned, emotional cruelty. Eleanor's carefully orchestrated plan had backfired as completely as her birthday surprise. 6 months after that night at Lombardi's, I was promoted to guest services manager, supervising a team of 12. The position came with a company car, an expense account, and a salary approaching $60,000. At the hotel's annual awards ceremony, I stood on stage, accepting an award for exceptional customer satisfaction. I thought about Eleanor's prayer for David to come to his senses. Her prayers had been answered, just not in the way she intended. My acceptance speech was brief, thanking my team and the restaurant experience that prepared me. The audience of executives applauded someone Eleanor had dismissed as unworthy. David's LinkedIn connection request arrived the same week as my manager promotion. He was tracking my career, and the man who recorded my expected humiliation now wanted to be associated with my actual success. The greatest satisfaction came from living well without needing their approval. My happiness was my own, built on real achievements and authentic relationships. The ultimate revenge wasn't causing them pain. It was proving their cruelty had been a waste of time. Eleanor's need to diminish me said more about her limitations than mine. Her birthday gift had freed me to find a success that existed far beyond her narrow world. Standing in my corner office 18 months later, looking out at the city, I felt grateful for every criticism that pushed me toward independence. Eleanor's decorated envelope had contained the greatest gift possible: liberation from people who never deserved the effort I'd spent trying to earn their love. If this story of ultimate vindication had you cheering out loud, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when she calmly signed those divorce papers and pulled out her job offer letter. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more incredible revenge stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. End of story.